My parents drove 6 hours to help my sister decorate her new house. 2 weeks later, neither of them came to my kid's emergency surgery. Hospitals are too depressing, Mom said. Then, Dad showed up at my door holding papers with my name on them and said, Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hayden's ceramic mug was on the counter next to the coffee maker. The mug was lopsided. The handle had a thumb groove where the glaze had pooled too thick during the kiln firing. Dad was painted across the front in blue letters that leaned in 3 different directions because Hayden was 7 when he made it, and 7-year-olds do not paint in straight lines. On the bottom, in silver Sharpie, was a date, October 14th. His birthday. The teacher had told every student to write their birthday on the bottom, so the parents would always know when the mug was made. The doorbell rang at 8:47 on a Saturday morning. Gemma was at the grocery store with Maisie. Hayden was upstairs playing a video game with the volume too loud. The house smelled like the toast I had just burned because I burn toast every Saturday, and Gemma has stopped mentioning it. The door opened. My father Sterling was standing on the porch in his winter coat, holding a manila folder against his chest, the way people hold folders when the folder contains something they do not want to show but have driven 90 minutes to deliver. Reid, I need 10 minutes. Dad, it is Saturday. I know. Please, he came inside. He sat down at the kitchen table. He put the folder on the table. He opened it. Inside was a stack of loan documents, a mortgage application, a closing disclosure, a promissory note, a deed of trust, all from Prairie Land Title in Lincoln, all dated October 14th. He slid the stack across the table to me. We need you to sign the refinance. It will move the mortgage into Breyer's name. It will take 30 days. The bank will not flag it if we do it before February. I looked at the documents. I am a title examiner. I read closing disclosures every day. I read them the way a mechanic reads engine noise, which is by what is wrong before I notice what is right. 3 things were wrong on the first page. First, the property address was 4412 Sheridan Lane, Lincoln. That was my sister Breyer's new house. The house my parents had driven 6 hours to help her decorate on October 14th. Second, the borrowers were listed as Breyer Corwin Weeks and Reid Corwin. My name, my social security number. My employer listed as Heartland Title Services, Omaha, 3rd. The signature on the closing page. It said Reid Corwin. The date beside it said October 14th. The R in Reid leaned to the left. My R leans to the right. I sign documents 40 to 50 times a day. The R always leans right because I press hard on the downstroke with my right hand. The signature on the closing page was not my hand. It was not my lean. It was not me. On October 14th, I had been at Methodist Hospital from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. Hayden's appendix had ruptured at 3:17 a.m. Gemma and I had driven to the ER in our pajamas. The surgery started at 6:22 a.m. The recovery took until evening. My parents were not there. Neither of them. My mother Claudette had sent one text at 8:14 a.m. Hospitals are too depressing. Keep us updated. At 2:14 p.m., Gemma had sent a message to the family chat. Hayden is out of surgery. He is stable. Thank God. Claudette had replied with a heart emoji. At 2:14 p.m., October 14th, the same date on the forged closing page, I looked at the signature. I looked at the mug on the counter. October 14th was on the bottom of the mug in silver Sharpie, and it was on the closing page in ink, and one of those 2 things had been put there by a 7-year-old who loved me, and the other had been put there by a 66-year-old man who needed my credit score. I set the documents down. Dad, this is my signature. Yes, I did not sign this. Sterling's hand went to the edge of the folder. His fingers pressed the cardboard. Reid, we needed to move quickly. The rate lock was expiring. Breyer's credit was not ready. Your mother and I decided to add you as co-borrower to get the loan through. We were going to tell you. You forged my signature on a federal loan document on the day my son was in emergency surgery. It was not like that. What was it like? He did not answer. His hand stayed on the folder. His eyes went to the kitchen counter where Hayden's mug was sitting next to the coffee maker. He looked at the mug for about 4 seconds. He did not know the date on the bottom. He had never looked. If this is the story you came for, subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Because the forged signature was not the beginning. It was the receipt. 3 things. My name is Reid, 36 years old, title examiner at Heartland Title Services in Omaha. 11 years. Every day I review property documents, mortgage filings, lien searches, deed transfers, and closing signatures. My job is to find the thing that does not belong. The wrong date, the missing notary, the signature that does not match the affidavit. I have caught 14 fraudulent closings in 11 years. Each one started with a signature that leaned the wrong way, or a date that did not match, or a social security number that appeared on a property the named borrower had never visited. The forgery on Breyer's closing disclosure had all 3. Hayden is 8 now. He was 7 on October 14th. His appendix ruptured at 3:17 in the morning. Gemma heard him crying from the bathroom. She found him on the floor. The ambulance came at 3:31. By 4 and we were at Methodist. By 6:22 the surgeon, Dr. Wynn, had him in the operating room. The surgery took 2 hours and 14 minutes. The appendix had perforated. There was peritonitis. The recovery was not routine. It was not simple. It was not a waiting room chair experience. My son was in post-operative care for 9 hours with IV antibiotics and a drainage tube and a pain level he described as like someone is squeezing my stomach with pliers. He is 8. He should not know what pliers feel like on the inside of his body. He does now. My father-in-law, Harmon Price, was at the hospital by 5:11 a.m. Nobody called him. Gemma had texted her mother's old phone number out of habit. Her mother died 3 years ago. Harmon still keeps the phone charged on the kitchen counter in Council Bluffs because he says the battery would die if he unplugged it, and he does not want the battery to die. The text came through on the phone. Harmon read it. He did not call back. He drove. He stopped at our house first. He used his spare key. He went to the kitchen counter. He took Hayden's ceramic mug off the counter and wrapped it in a dish towel and put it in his coat pocket. He drove to Methodist. He walked into the surgical waiting room at 5:11 a.m. He handed me the mug. The boy is going to be fine. The mug is for you, not him. Drink something. Then he sat in the chair next to me for 11 hours. He did not leave. He did not check his phone. He read a paperback Western he had brought in his coat pocket. When the surgeon came out at 8:36 a.m., Harmon stood up. When the surgeon said Hayden was stable, Harmon sat back down. He finished his chapter. Then he closed the book and said, I am going to get us dinner. Stay here. He came back with 2 runs of sandwiches and a bag of fries, and we ate them in the waiting room while Hayden slept in recovery with a tube in his side. Harmon did not talk about my parents. He did not ask where they were. He did not need to. Their absence was in the room the way absence is always in a room, which is that everyone notices it, and the people who should be filling it are the only ones who do not know it is there. My parents were in Lincoln, 6 hours away, helping Breyer decorate. On Monday morning, I called Prairie Land Title in Lincoln. The receptionist connected me to the closer who had handled the Sheridan Lane transaction. Her name was Dana. She remembered the closing because it had been unusual in 2 ways. First, 2 parties had been present instead of 3, Sterling Corwin and Claudette Corwin. The borrower, Breyer Corwin Weeks, had signed remotely via notarized power of attorney. The co-borrower, Reid Corwin, had signed in person. Dana said, your father presented your identification, a photocopy of your driver's license. He said you were his son and that you had asked him to sign on your behalf because you had a family emergency. He said you were at the hospital. He was very convincing. He seemed worried about you. A family emergency. My son was in surgery. My father told the closer I had a family emergency and used the emergency as the reason for the forged signature. He had used Hayden's ruptured appendix as his cover story for the crime he was committing while the appendix was being removed. Second, Dana said the title agent had noted in the file that Sterling's hand had trembled when he signed the co-borrower line. The agent had asked if he was okay. Sterling had said, just nervous. Big purchase. The title agent had made a marginal note. Co-borrower's representative appeared emotional during signature execution. In 11 years of reading title files, I had never seen that note on a legitimate closing. The title agent had seen something wrong and had written it down and had not stopped the closing. That note would be in the file when the lender review opened it. Dana continued. The closing had begun at 1:45 p.m. The final signature page was executed at 2:11 p.m. At 2:14 p.m., based on the family chat timestamp, Claudette had picked up her phone in the closing room and replied to Gemma's message about Hayden's surgery with a heart emoji. She had been sitting at a title company table with a forged loan document in front of her, 3 minutes after her husband's trembling hand had signed her son's name. And she had sent a heart emoji for a child she had chosen not to visit while the ink was still wet. Dana asked me if everything was all right. I said, no, it is not. I will be in touch through my attorney. I almost put the phone down and drove to Lincoln that afternoon. The car keys were on the counter next to Hayden's mug. Gemma was at work. Hayden was at school. Maisie was at preschool. The house was empty, and the drive to Lincoln was 90 minutes, and the closer's office was on the second floor of a building I had been to 3 times for work, and I knew exactly which parking lot to use. I did not drive. Driving to Lincoln would have been anger. What I needed was architecture. I needed the full picture before I knocked on anything. I opened my laptop. I pulled the loan documents Sterling had left on my kitchen table. If you have made it this far, subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Because the forged signature and the decoration lie and the heart emoji at the closing table were 3 layers. There were 3 more underneath them. The mortgage on 44-112 Sheridan Lane was $385,000, 30-year fixed. The down payment was $48,000. Sterling and Claudette had told the family 2 years ago that their retirement savings were gone. Sterling had called me in January of the previous year, his voice tight, and said, Reid, your mother and I have nothing left. The prescriptions are killing us. I need help. He had asked me to set up a monthly family contribution. $1,200. I had set it up the same day because he was my father, and his voice had been tight, and my mother's prescriptions were real, and the $1,200 was coming out of a household budget that already did not have $1,200 in slack, which meant Gemma and I stopped eating out and stopped replacing the kids' clothes at full price and started shopping the clearance rack at Target every Tuesday. 24 months, $1,200 a month, $28,800. The savings that were gone had been spent on Briar's down payment. The monthly contributions I had been sending were not for prescriptions. They were rebuilding the $48,000 my parents had spent to buy my sister a house using my forged signature. My money was replacing the money my parents had spent on the child they actually showed up for. I pulled my credit report next. The $385,000 mortgage appeared on my file as an active debt. My debt-to-income ratio had shifted. My credit score, which had been 791 in September, was now 723. The first mortgage payment due December 1st had not been made. The second, due January 1st, had not been made. 2 missed payments. On a loan I did not take out. On a house I have never been to. For a sister who did not invite me to the closing. That is why Sterling came to my door on a Saturday morning with a manila folder. The refinance papers he wanted me to sign would move the mortgage into Briar's name only, removing me as co-borrower. But the reason was not generosity. The reason was that a 3rd missed payment in February would trigger a lender review. A lender review would pull the closing file. The closing file would show a signature that leans the wrong way on a date when the named signer was at a hospital 45 miles away. The lender would refer it to the FBI. My father was not asking me to sign a refinance. He was asking me to legitimize a forgery before the bank figured out it was one. I closed the laptop. Hayden's mug was on the counter. The silver Sharpie on the bottom said October 14th. The loan documents on the table said October 14th. One of those dates was a birthday. The other was a crime scene. Gemma knew by Monday night. She had known something was wrong since Saturday when she came home from the grocery store and found Sterling's coffee cup still on the table and me sitting in the living room with a folder in my lap and a look on my face she had not seen since the night Hayden went to the ER. Gemma called Kemp on Tuesday. Kemp is Briar's husband. He manages a gym in Lincoln. Gemma and Kemp are not close, but they have the specific bond that in-laws develop when both of them married into the same difficult family and neither of them chose the difficulty. Gemma asked Kemp one question. Did you know Reid's name is on your mortgage? Kemp was quiet for a long time. Then he said, No, your wife knew. Gemma, what are you telling me? Pull the closing disclosure. Page 4. Co-borrower. Reid Corwin. Forged signature. Sterling did it at the closing while our son was in surgery. Kemp pulled the documents that evening. He called Gemma back at 9:47 p.m. He said, I thought Sterling co-signed with his own credit. Briar told me the bank approved it based on her father's retirement account. She did not tell me it was Reid. Kemp found the text the next morning. Briar's phone was on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. He was not looking for texts. He was looking for the mortgage payment app because the January payment was overdue, and he wanted to see if Briar had set up autopay. The app opened. He tapped the payment history. 0 payments recorded. He tapped the account details. Co-borrower, Reid Corwin. Kemp stared at the screen for 11 seconds. He had been told, by Briar, by Sterling, by Claudette, that Sterling had co-signed with his own retirement credit. He had never pulled up the actual loan. He had trusted his wife the way people trust wives, which is completely and without reading the fine print. He swiped out of the app. He saw the text thread with Claudette. One message stood out. Dated November 2nd, 3 weeks after the closing, make sure Reid doesn't find out about the cosign until the refi clears. Once it's in my name only, he can't do anything. Dad said he'll handle the paperwork. Just keep quiet through February. Kemp screenshotted the text. He sat down at the kitchen counter with the phone in his hand and the shower still running in the bathroom, and the sound of his wife's shampoo bottles clinking against the tile in the understanding, arriving all at once the way understanding arrives when it has been delayed by trust, that the woman in the shower had been planning to use and discard her brother's credit score on a timeline that ended in February. Kemp sent the screenshot to Gemma. Gemma showed it to me that night at the kitchen table while the kids were asleep. Briar had not been a passive beneficiary. Briar had been managing a timeline. Use Reid's credit. Make 12 payments to establish history. Refinance in February. Remove Reid. Walk away clean. The $385,000 house on Sheridan Lane was a building my sister was planning to own with my credit score, and then detach from me like a booster rocket dropping into the ocean after delivering the payload. I almost laughed. The architecture of the fraud was familiar, not because I had seen it in my family before, but because I had seen it in my title work. 3 times in 11 years I had flagged closings where a family member had forged a co-borrower's signature to get a loan approved. Each time the forger had believed the fix would be a quiet refinance. Each time the refinance had failed, because the payments had fallen behind. Each time the lender review had found the forgery, and each time the forger had gone to federal court. My sister was running a scheme I had been trained to detect. She just did not know that. Saturday afternoon, 1 week after Sterling's visit. My kitchen. Sterling and Claudette arrived together. Sterling had called that morning and said, Reid, your mother wants to talk. They arrived at 1:15. Claudette was in the passenger seat. She was wearing the cardigan she wears to church. She was holding her phone in her lap the way she holds it when she is ready to call someone if the conversation does not go her way. Harmon was on speakerphone. He had called at 12:50 to ask if I needed him. I said, "Stay on the line. I want you to hear this." Gemma was in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed. Hayden was upstairs. Maisie was at a playdate. Sterling sat at the kitchen table. Claudette sat next to him. The folder from last Saturday was still on the table. The mug was on the counter. The documents were spread out. The October 14th date was visible on the closing page. Claudette delivered the speech she had prepared in the car. "Reid, your father and I have given you everything. We paid for your community college. We co-signed your first apartment. We sat through your wedding and smiled, even though Gemma's family served pulled pork at a reception and called it catering. And when Hayden was sick, I told you the truth. Hospitals are depressing. They are. Watching a child in pain is something a mother should not have to do twice. And I did it with Briar's C-section, and I was not going to do it again for a routine appendix. You act like missing one hospital visit makes us monsters. It does not. It makes us people who chose not to sit in a waiting room for 6 hours, pretending the coffee was drinkable. Briar needed us for the house. You needed us for a waiting room chair. There is a difference. Gemma's arms tightened across her chest. Harmon's breathing was audible through the speaker. The phone was on the counter next to the mug. I did not respond to the speech. I picked up the closing disclosure from the table. I turned it to the signature page. I held it up so the October 14th date was visible to both of them. The signature is dated October 14th, Dad. That is the day Hayden was in surgery. The R leans left. Mine leans right. You forged it. 24 words. Sterling's jaw loosened. His hands went flat on the table. His shoulders came in. His body seemed to compress into the chair the way a man's body compresses when the sentence he was hoping to avoid has been said out loud in his son's kitchen with his son's wife in the doorway and his son's father-in-law on the phone. Claudette's mouth opened. She looked at Sterling. She looked at me. She looked at the document. Sterling, you told me Reid knew. Sterling did not answer. Sterling, you told me at the closing that Reid had signed the papers that morning by email. You told me you had his consent. Sterling's hand pressed harder on the table. Sterling, Claudette. Stop the room was quiet for 5 seconds. The speakerphone on the counter was quiet. Harmon was listening. Harmon does not speak when he is listening. He listened. Claudette stood up. She did not leave the room. She stood behind the chair she had been sitting in and gripped the back of it with both hands, and her face went through the sequence that faces go through when a woman realizes she has been defending a lie her husband told her, and the lie is not a small one. And the defense she just delivered about pulled pork and waiting room chairs is now attached to a federal crime she did not know she was an accessory to. Reid, I did not know. Mom, you were at the closing table. You were in the room when he signed my name. He told me you had emailed the signature that morning. He showed me his phone. He said he had a confirmation from you. There was no email. There was no confirmation. My son was in surgery. You sent a heart emoji at 2:14 p.m. from the closing room. You were sitting at a title company table watching your husband forge your son's name on a federal loan document. And you picked up your phone and replied to a text about your grandson's surgery with a heart. Not a prayer, not a question. Not is he okay. A heart. One emoji. Then you put the phone down and you watched him sign my name. Her grip on the chair tightened. Her knuckles went white. The cardigan she had worn to my kitchen was the same cardigan she had worn to church last Sunday and the Sunday before that and the Sunday before. That because my mother has been wearing the same rotation of 4 cardigans for 6 years and none of them have ever been worn to a place where she had to tell the truth. Her mouth was working, but nothing was coming out of it. Her eyes were moving between Sterling and me and the documents on the table and the mug on the counter. She did not know why the mug mattered. She had never looked at the bottom. Sterling's hands were still flat on the table. His face had gone the color of the manila folder. Gray beige. A color that does not exist outside of moments when a man's body realizes before his brain does that the thing he built to hide what he did has just been taken apart in his son's kitchen by a man whose job is taking apart exactly this kind of thing. Harmon's voice came through the speaker. One sentence. The first thing he had said in 20 minutes. Sterling, my daughter-in-law served pulled pork at her wedding because that is what the people she loves eat. Your son served you coffee this morning in a mug his boy made in art class. That is also what the people he loves do. What did you serve your son on October 14th? Sterling did not answer. Claudette did not answer. The questions sat in the kitchen the way Harmon's questions always sit, which is quietly, and for a very long time, and without needing anyone to respond, because the silence is the response. The 6 things that happened over the next 3 weeks are things. My attorney filed a fraud complaint with the Lancaster County DA on Monday morning. The complaint included the forged closing disclosure, the hospital admission records from Methodist showing my presence from 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. on October 14th, the timestamp of Claudette's heart emoji from the closing room, and the screenshot of Breyer's text to Claudette about keeping quiet through February. The DA opened a preliminary investigation within 72 hours. The $1,200 monthly auto pay to Sterling's checking account was canceled at 9:14 a.m. Monday. 24 months of payments. $28,800. My attorney filed a civil restitution demand for the full amount. Sterling's attorney, a man he had found on a Tuesday afternoon using a Google search, told him the demand was substantial and that the forgery complaint made settlement urgent. Sterling did not have $28,800. Sterling had a retirement account with $11,400 in it and a checking account that had been running on my auto pay for 2 years. The mortgage lender was notified by my attorney on Wednesday. The notification included a sworn affidavit stating that my signature on the closing disclosure was forged, that I had never authorized the use of my name or social security number as co-borrower, and that I was requesting immediate removal from the loan. The lender opened a file review. The review would take 30 to 60 days. During the review, no payments could be applied, which meant Breyer's mortgage was effectively frozen. The third missed payment hit on February 1st. The loan went into default. Kemp filed for legal separation from Breyer on January 28th, not because of the forgery, because of the text. Make sure Reid doesn't find out. Kemp told Gemma on the phone that he could live with a financial mistake, but he could not live with a wife who planned a timeline for using her brother's credit and discarding it. Kemp moved to a rental in downtown Lincoln. He took Rory and Fenn on alternate weeks. Breyer called me once, 3 days after Kemp left. Her voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. She said, "Reid, this was not supposed to happen this way." I said it was not supposed to happen at all. She was quiet for a long time. I almost said something else. I almost told her that the cabin trip, the Thanksgiving we were 11 and 8, when Dad had carried her on his shoulders to the dock and I had walked behind them carrying the tackle box, was the first time I understood that love in this family had a direction, and the direction did not include me. I did not say it. The sentence belonged to a conversation we were never going to have, because the conversation would require her to see herself the way the closing disclosure saw her, which was as a borrower on a loan she could not afford using a signature she knew was not real. She did not call again. Sterling's name was removed from the family group chat by his own sister, my Aunt Cordelia, who had read the text screenshots after Gemma posted them with one line, "Dad forged Reid's signature on Breyer's mortgage on the day Hayden was in emergency surgery." The closing disclosure is dated October 14th. Reid was at Methodist Hospital. Mom was at the closing table. 17 people left the chat in 5 days. Cordelia left last. Before leaving, she posted, "Sterling. Everett would not have done this. You know that. Everett was my grandfather. He had been a carpenter in Council Bluffs for 41 years. He had built things with his hands and signed his name on every one of them, and the signature was always his." A gift basket arrived at the house 10 days after the confrontation. From Claudette. Inside, a box of Hayden's favorite peanut butter cookies, a stuffed elephant for Maisie, and a handwritten note. We are sorry about the hospital. We are sorry about the papers. We just wanted Briar to have what you have. A home. A family. A kitchen table. You understand that, don't you? Please call. Mom, Hayden saw the cookies. He asked if he could have one. I said yes. Maisie took the elephant to her room. I read the note once. I put it in the recycling bin. Gemma watched me do it. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The recycling goes out on Tuesdays, and the note would be at the curb by morning, and the curb is where notes go when the person who wrote them used a gift basket to ask for forgiveness instead of using the truth. Saturday morning. 3 weeks after the confrontation. Kitchen on Catalpa Lane. Hayden was at the table eating cereal with a spoon that was too big for the bowl because he uses the soup spoon for everything and nobody corrects him. Maisie was on the floor drawing a picture of a horse that looked like a dog. Gemma was at the counter pouring coffee into 2 mugs. One was the green mug she bought at a farmer's market in 2019. The other was Hayden's ceramic mug with the lopsided handle and the blue letters that spelled Dad in 3 different directions. Harmon's truck pulled into the driveway at 8:44. He was carrying a paper bag of kolaches from the Czech bakery in South Omaha that has been open since 1947. He came through the back door without knocking because Harmon has never knocked on our door and he is not going to start. He set the bag on the counter. He looked at Hayden. "Morning, young man." Hayden looked up from his cereal. "Morning, Grandpa Harmon. Did you bring the cherry ones?" "Cherry and apricot." "The apricot are for your mother. The cherry are for people with taste." Hayden grinned. The grin was the grin of a boy who has one grandfather who shows up at 4 a.m. with a ceramic mug wrapped in a dish towel and another grandfather who shows up on a Saturday morning with a forged signature and a folder of loan documents. The boy does not know yet that both of those men are his grandfathers. He will know someday. For now, he knows which one brings kolaches and which one does not come to hospitals, because hospitals are too depressing. Across town, Sterling and Claudette's house was quiet in the way houses are quiet when the phone has stopped ringing and the people inside have stopped expecting it to ring again. The auto pay was gone. The civil demand was on the counter. The DAS file was open. The family chat had 9 people left, and none of them had spoken since Cordelia's message about Everett. Sterling was in his chair in the living room, reading nothing. Claudette was in the kitchen, standing at the counter, with both hands flat on the granite, not making anything, not calling anyone, not writing any notes. Briar's house on Sheridan Lane had a frozen mortgage, a moved-out husband, and a 3rd missed payment that had tipped the loan into default. The refinance Sterling had brought to my kitchen would never be signed. The forgery would surface in the lender review. The review would find a signature that leaned the wrong way on a day when the man whose name it bore was holding a ceramic mug in a surgical waiting room 45 miles away. On my kitchen counter, the mug was full. Gemma had filled it. The coffee was hot. The handle was lopsided. The blue paint said Dad. The silver Sharpie on the bottom said October 14th. Harmon sat down at the table. He opened the bag of kolaches. He handed Hayden a cherry one. He handed Maisie an apricot one. He poured himself a coffee in the green mug. He did not pour it in Hayden's mug because Hayden's mug is mine, and Harmon knows that and has known it since the morning he wrapped it in a dish towel at 4:47 a.m. and drove it to a hospital because a boy was in surgery and the boy's father needed something to hold. If this story found you today, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and share it with the person whose parents drove 6 hours for one child and 0 hours for the other. My father forged my name on a mortgage the day my son was in emergency surgery. My mother sent a heart emoji from the closing table. My sister planned a timeline to use my credit and discard it. And the man who showed up at the hospital before dawn with a ceramic mug in his coat pocket was not my father. He was my wife's father. He brought the mug because a 7-year-old had told him once that if Dad has his mug, Dad will not be scared. Harmon remembered. Harmon always remembers. The coffee is hot. The kolaches are cherry. The mug says Dad. The boy is fine. And the signature on the bottom is the only one in this house that matters.